How's it going, everyone? This is Eliot from the Primal Reset podcast, the podcast that uncovers the latest trends, science-backed strategies, and practices that are shaping our health and wellness industry. Today, we're talking to Peter Rivera, who will be sharing his expert knowledge about peptide therapy, longevity, and how these treatments are redefining the preventative health. Welcome back to the Primal Reset podcast. Today we have Peter Rivera. He has been in the industry for the health and wellness industry for about 30 years. He has really dived in deep into the cutting edge world of peptide therapy. Peter is a leading voice within peptide education and therapy, has also been a personal trainer, and is the founder of Responsible Peptides LLC. He's on a mission to make high quality, science-backed peptide treatments much more accessible for everyone. Peter, thank you so much for coming today. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Absolute pleasure is all mine, Ellie. Thank you very much for having me on.
Of course. So tell me a little bit about your background, about yourself, how you got into wellness.
My story starts back in high school. My father passed away when I was 17 years old. He was 38 years old and he died of AIDS. And consequently, knowingly gave it to my mom, and she passed away when I was 21. She was 40. So it was very difficult in that space. And at that time in the early 80s, maybe, late 80s, early 90s, where medicine just wasn't really evolved then. And it was very difficult watching both your parents, move on, and you couldn't help them. You couldn't save them, and as a child, that's probably the most PTSD thing you can carry, for a while with you. So that kind of boosted me into my training life, which was wanting to help people. And then at some point I knew that science and exercise and medicine would kind of have to come together somewhere, right? And I wound up injuring my Achilles tendon. I tore it, a slight tear in it, which forced me out of a park ranger job that I had, which I loved, working with the animals. It was fun. And I went to a doctor for 4 months and, just with the boot and stretching. And he said I would never, walk the same again or run the same again, or maybe even run at all, that it would just keep coming back. Well, then I found a peptide called BPC-157, which is a healing peptide, which is naturally found in our gastric juices. And I was reading up on it and I was like, let me check this out. And I tried it and healed my Achilles tendon in 2 months. So
Wow.
My degree's in biology, and it was like fascinating for me to have science work so quickly, So I was like, oh my God, I got to know more about these peptides. So I was also 45 pounds overweight at that point. It was right after COVID, right? So I was just like, I got to do something to reduce my insulin resistance. So even having over 30 years experience in the fitness world and everything else, I could navigate 10 pounds, but I couldn't get my sugar low enough. My insulin was just spiking every time I ate. I was in constant fight or flight. So I got into the GLP-1s, and semaglutide had just come out, and then tirzepatide had just followed it. And that was like the 2.0 version of it. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go for the 2.0 version. If it's out, let's see what happens. So having that science background, I tested on myself, and 4.5 months, I lost 45, and my body came back to homeostasis. And then that's when I was like, what else is out there? Like, right. You get a little taste of one and then you go to another one. Right. And then you're like, man, this is so much better than any medication out there. Right. Because at the end of the day, the peptide is only a small amino acid chain. That's all it is. It's not a medication, which is a misconception out there, because they're treating it for a disease like diabetes. They call it a medication, but it's really not. It's actually just a protein, and that's all it does. But these magnificent proteins we actually produce in our own bodies. But what it is over time, it diminishes as we get older, to our environment, our food, all those kind of lovely things, aging, it changes a lot of them. So there's a multitude of peptides out there that most people don't even know about that can do some miraculous things that medicine could never touch.
Yeah, I mean, what a story. That's very inspiring, very interesting. And to your point of kind of figuring it out for yourself at the start, and that's what creates interest, right?
Yeah.
If something's working for you at the start and you've tried this new thing, you just want to know more. So that's a great story. It's very interesting. It's a sad start, and I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I appreciate
With,
it.
yeah, of course, I never wish anyone would have to go through that. From what I've heard and what I've seen from you as well, you've definitely established yourself within trying to help other people as well with peptides and kind of getting them to understand the educational standpoint of why peptides are good for you. And we can see this in a lot of different things as well, where melatonin, for example, like we produce melatonin to fall asleep. And as we age, and depending on the certain activities that we do, whether it's watching TV or being on our phones before going to bed, it diminishes our melatonin. And we have to replenish it with melatonin in
Right.
order to be able to have a good night's sleep, right? So, kind of in the same way with peptides, like we do produce a lot of these natural supplements, but we're not aware that we produce it, and we're not aware how to utilize it as well. How would you say that you mixed with growing up with the same old healthcare system that we've always had and modern science with old school that you've kind of combined to make it more natural health practices? How do they work together? How do they clash?
So perfect example of how they work together is actually personally, I actually just had an A-lift surgery 7 months ago. So I lifted young and dumb, herniated 3 discs in my back, and over time, it was just like you have to have surgery, and these discs have to come out, and we have to put titanium ones in. So that was like okay, this is going to be a big one, right? So, luckily for me, um, I work hand in hand with the owner at Soma, the owners, I should say, at Soma, and we came up with a healing protocol for peptides. So I started it a week before my surgery, had my surgery. Of course, the guidelines that my doctor gave me, I followed because I wanted it all documented. And, they gave me medication for, anti-inflammatory, this and that, pain, all kind of other stuff. So I did that protocol at the same time as the peptides. But what I did was I did it for the first 72 hours and then I cut it and I continued with the peptides. So personally, I actually meshed them, but I wanted to be on the record that, hey, I did this for 3 days, along with the peptides. And then after that, I just did the peptides. And I have to tell you, a week out, I was pretty much no pain. I was walking 1.5 miles a day. When I went to see my doc at my 3-week appointment, he said, I've never seen anybody heal as fast as you. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, it's all documented on my medical files. I was like, I'm on BPC, I'm on copper, I'm on SS31, I'm on CJC 1295. I'm on ARA 290 for neuropathy. So, all these things. So I literally was the perfect example of what you just asked. The clashes that I see are the misconceptions of what peptides are and what they do, and also the lack of education. And I think that's the most important part, right? So I think the more you're educated about anything, you can learn it, right? You can understand it better, the more education you have. If you don't have the education, then you're usually going on what you heard, not what you learned. And those are two different things, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
so I think that's where people need to go to JAMA, which is a medical service or a medical entity. Go to New England Journal of Medicine. Go to Mayo Clinic. Look at real clinical trials. I know white papers are boring as heck to read. Okay, so if you could manage getting just to the conclusion of what it says, you'll find out you actually may not have known that about a certain peptide or a certain medication you've been on that caused this, and this reaction, right? It's quite interesting where you watch TV now that pretty much every other commercial has to do with some sort of medication. It's like it's rampant, and it's not just the GLP-1s, it's not the weight loss ones. It's, I mean, from, eczema to, sleeping, like you were saying before. I mean, but there's all of them. And then they list these side effects, and it's boom, 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 boom. One of my favorite ones, and I forget what commercial it is, but it's, this medication does this, it's wonderful. And it has a list of things and it goes, dying, blindness, and diarrhea. And I go, well, does the dying come first and then I go blind and then I have diarrhea? Like, I don't understand, but I don't want that. So, I look at that and I'm like, wow, I'm like, it's just rampant everywhere and it's just pushed down your throat. Whereas if people actually understood in the history of peptides, nobody's ever overdosed and nobody's ever died from peptides, ever. Insulin is a peptide. Most diabetics don't even know that are taking it because they're like, what do you mean? I go, well, we produce it naturally. Every time you eat, your pancreas secretes insulin. That's what it is. And that monitors blood sugar. It's not rocket science, as I would say when I used to train people and athletes like yourself. I'd say it's application. So it literally is an A to a B. It's a straight line, And what happens is in between that straight line, people try to blur it or gray it up or muck it up for some reason. And it's really not necessary, because I mean, that is the misinformation, train is real. And unfortunately, more people are on it because they don't want to invest in educating themselves. And I'm hoping to let people know, hey, listen, there's a place you can go to get the proper education, and it's with Soma Peptides. We do everything scientifically backed. Like there's nothing we do that's haphazard. Everything is boom, 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 boom. And if something doesn't mesh in between, they scrap it and start over. So it's if it doesn't come out perfect, then it doesn't go out, and that's what I love about working with them and with Soma itself is the science behind it, because I'm a science guy, but science doesn't lie. There's no in between. It either is or it isn't, right? There's no gray area when it comes to that. So I think the education part is definitely going to be the key for more people to get the misinformation down and to get the level of peptide use up, and I
Yeah,
think
I agree. I think the education standpoint that we've had is, like you said, we either hear it from someone or we kind of see it on social media and we're not quite sure if that's true or not. And I'm kind of curious, what's your opinion on how we can attract more people to science-backed education on more natural, holistic health with peptides or anything else?
so there's some people in the forefront of this industry, right? So you have a Dr. Tina, who has a great podcast who talks about peptides. You had Dr. Peter Atita, who's one of them as well. But the go-to for me is going to be Dr. Seeds, and he has a company called SSRP, and he actually has a peptide certification and has educational courses, just not only on peptides but on supplementation and how the body works and things like that. And those are the people you seek out. Those are the people who are the forefront of the industry. I would definitely tell people, don't rely on social media. I have a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, I'm on the GLP-1s and I've only lost like 46 pounds in the first month. Well, I'm like, well, that's the average weight loss, and they're like, but Becky in Indiana, or, in Nova Scotia lost 40 pounds in her first month. And I'm like, no, she probably didn't. It's like, there's a gentleman I follow, David Goggins, and I love him and love his mindset. And he says, no one ever puts out the bad stuff on social media. Nobody ever
Yeah,
puts out their losses, right? It's always, hey, it's a win-win-win. I'm doing great. You know what? Not everybody does great out of the gate. There's different circumstances that have to happen. There's you got to put the work in regardless, right? And this is being a former athlete, professional athlete. If you don't put the work in, you don't get the reward, you know.
exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. So I think that you can really do some amazing things with these peptides. Educate yourself in that realm, though, with the Dr. Seeds, SSRP, like Dr. Tina's, Peter Tita. Those people will really focus in on the science aspect of it. And that's what you kind of want to follow.
All right. Yeah, that's great information. And to your point, I do believe that we're all caught up in the result and not in the process. And it is difficult because reading all these white papers from Mayo Clinic or New England Medical Journal as well, it's definitely difficult to read through that and want to be educated. And especially if you're not doing it yourself and not seeing that result and seeing everyone else's results where, Becky from Indiana or Nova Scotia is losing quicker than I am. What we have to understand at the same time is all of our bodies are different. We all react to peptides or any sort of treatment differently, whether it's, the treatment you get from doctors at the hospital with a bunch of side effects. Sometimes people don't get those side effects,
Right.
right? And sometimes they
Hmm.
do. And that's why they kind of give you that disclaimer. But at the same way, it works holistically as well. So if you take a certain peptide for whatever reason it may be for you, that doesn't mean you're always going to get the best results compared to other people. And I think we compare ourselves a bit too much and we don't focus on our own journey. And that's kind of where the education point falls off.
Mm.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult world and not everyone's going to care about the education standpoint of it. I always try to encourage people to do some research, look out for what they can do for their body, and talk to people like you where you can really personalize the approach where, hey, like I've learned a little bit about you. We can try this. If this isn't the most effective way, there are multiple other ways that your body may react better to.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what my goal is in sharing with the world and social media wise as well, trying to get experts on this podcast to share their education but also to attract those people who want to see a result, but want to learn the education at the same standpoint. Because if I say I want to lose 20 pounds and you help me lose 20 pounds, but I have no idea what you gave me and why you gave it to me, then I
Yeah.
haven't really achieved anything at that point.
Right. There's no lifestyle change there, right? So, and that's what
Exactly.
it is too. The other thing too, I would implore people to do is twice a year get your blood work done. See where your numbers are at. Everyone's like, oh, I'm pretty good, and I'm like, okay, well, are you hormonally balanced? Because you're a 50-year-old woman who might be going through menopause right now, and that's why you're having trouble with the weight loss and the GLP-1s aren't kicking in right. So you need to manage that first. So get your blood work done, get your hormonal panels done, know where you're at, because like we discussed before we started this recording, this is all about preventing, right? This is prevention. This isn't waiting until we get sick. Okay. It's not sick care. This is like saying, hey, listen, how do I navigate this world, this life of mine in the most healthiest manner possible so that I don't wind up with cancer or Alzheimer's or diabetes, or something that is going to be debilitating and in the end kill me, and it's going to be a bad, horrible death. You know what I mean? So this is all about preemptive stuff. And if you have a history of it in your family, then chances are you have a precursor. And it's okay to go to your doctor and say, hey, listen, I have a history of like heart attacks in my family. Can you test me for a precursor to see if I have that? Because they can test for that. You just have to ask for it. So you really have
Right.
to deep dive, right, and work with your medical professional. And if your medical professional isn't giving you the answers that you want, find another one. I mean, there's plenty of them out there, that are willing in the space. I mean, some people are so dedicated to their docs, for 20 years. Perfect example. I have a gentleman who was on ADHD medication for 30 years of his life, and no one ever introduced him into peptides. And I did. And literally in a week to 10 days, I think he said that he completely stopped taking his ADHD medication, and he felt better than he has felt since he ever started the medication. It was just
Wow.
mind blowing to him,
Wow.
So when you look at the aspect of what peptides can actually do for the medical industry, it could even solidify a medical professional even more in their craft, is being open to this stuff, right? And the most important part is watch where you're getting it from, where it's properly sourced from. Ask questions. Just don't go online and buy from Joe Schmo's, peptide company, who's making it in his garage. We have what are called certificates of analysis on our page on our website at soma.com, and those batches are tested. They're signed off twice by not only scientists but then a third party. So we go to third party testing. I should say we report to all of the federal agencies that we have to, the pharmacy agencies, with our standards, so that we are in the right place when it comes to efficacy. Because at the end of the day, you have no idea, where you're getting it from. If you're just going online and you're like, oh, that looks good, I'll order that because it's cheap. One person said, it was very smart, is, cheap medicine is cheap. So cheap
Yeah.
peptides, they're going to be cheap. So you're not going to count the quality of it, but at the end of the day, you pay what you get for it, right?
Exactly. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I've lived my life like that as well. I mean, and when it comes to health, a lot of people want to take that step. Yeah, there is times where it is out of your reach expensive wise, but let's think about it. Is a $500,000 medical bill for the ambulance when you get a heart attack or whatever it may be, and months of care to try and fix yourself after you get sick more expensive than maybe doing a bit of research, finding out where peptides, for example, or other treatments that are preventative, where it's $80 a month, and maybe it is $80 is a lot for some people, and I
Yep.
completely understand that. But is $80 a month cheaper than $500,000 medical bill where you're back into debt? I mean,
Right.
that's kind of the approach that I have always taken as well. On I want to live longer, and in order to live longer, I need to live healthier. And if I need to live healthier, I don't care what the cost is, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because I know in the end point, if I'm in the hospital, I'm going to take that hit and I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life. And my life might not even continue after that, too. So there's also
Sure.
that factor as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And the heartache that your family has to go through too. What I mean?
Exactly.
If
All
you're
your friends and family.
right, or if you're the breadwinner, or you know what I mean, or you're intricate part economically in your household, if you don't take care of yourself, everything else goes south. It just
Exactly.
does. And at some point in life, everything goes south. It just does. Whether it's whether it's relationship, whether it's money, whether it's a job. It just does at some point, it just goes south. And then you got to pick yourself up and you got to say, okay, this is either where I stay or you get to work. And you just start fixing one problem at a time, and you go to the next one, you go to the next one, you go to the next one. But to me, health is a non-negotiable. It's super easy to save that money because we're so wasteful in general. We all are. You could literally sit back and go, I really probably don't need this, 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 and this. And then you add that number up and you're like, man, that's like $200 a month I could have. Over a course of a year, it's $2,400 I could have in my bank. What am I
Yeah,
doing? Right. But you have to go through that process to think about it. And again, it's prioritizing what is important to you. Right. And
exactly.
health should be always number one, because without it, you have nothing else.
I agree. It always comes back to you at the end of the day. If you don't take care of yourself, everything else will fall.
Exactly.
Whether, like you say, the relationship wise, your health will fall, your job might fail as well. Like, if you're not taking care of yourself, need everything else is not going to fall into place. If you start with yourself, everything else will get better along the way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not selfish to do that either. It's smart,
It is.
It's
It is
smart.
smart to do
You
that.
can call it whatever you want. You can call it self-care. You can call it, head cleaning space. I don't care what you call it, but if you have to start with you, and again, especially if you want to be an example to others, because if you don't walk the walk, but just talk the talk, after a while, people are going to find out. That's why I've taken every peptide that we have so that I can speak to it to anybody who's interested in our peptides. Just like when I was a trainer, any exercise I ever gave somebody, I did a million times, because if I gave you an exercise and you got hurt and you're like, hey, am I supposed to feel it here? And I never did it. I'd be like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you're supposed to feel it there. And it's like, no, that's not where you're supposed to feel it on a plank. That's not the right move. So
Yeah.
you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to understand what you're saying. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree with you, but at least if you're being your genuine self and you're putting yourself out there and you're giving out the proper information. And when it comes to peptides, the proper information is the science. It is the science behind it. It's not that, I lost 45 pounds in 4.5 months. Everybody's going to be able to do that. No, it's not. It's not. I mean, I'm a fitness professional. I dedicated myself to a certain work regimen and deficit and everything else. And I put my thing, my ducks in a row, because my drive was getting there. Because once I saw the weight coming off, I got more and more invested in it. Right. So like my athlete self came out, I played soccer my whole life, and it was like the competitiveness came out in me. And I was like, I'm down 5 pounds. I'm like, I bet you if I cut this out and that out and I work out 5 more minutes in this area, I could do that. And the next week it'd be 6 pounds, And so again,
Yeah.
you have to be driven. And that's what it is. You have to be driven.
Yeah. You can't just wait for the end result and hope and pray for
No,
it.
and here's the other one too. I get all the time. I understand, Pete. You're right. I know. I just want it yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, we all do. I was like, we really do. We all want it yesterday, but it didn't happen in one day. Whatever happened to you did not happen in a day. It happened over time,
Right.
good or bad. And a habit is not built in 45 days. A habit is built doing it every day.
Exactly.
That's
I
it.
agree.
And that's
I
your
agree.
lifestyle change right there.
Yep. Yep. And kind of to that point, why do you think people struggle to stay consistent with their health? And what would you say is the secret to make it easier?
I believe the number one reason is accountability. I believe that the number one reason why anybody fails at anything is accountability. And it's not just self accountability, because what happens is when you start doing that, you start beating yourself up because you start saying negative things in your head, and it's repeated over and over. And it's just like a hammer hitting you every time you say it. I can't believe I failed. I can't believe I failed. You don't want, that's not healthy. That's not a good way to do it. It's great to have somebody to be there for you, somebody who's gone through what you're going through, maybe somebody to talk to. Some of the social media channels are great. They have the groups of people that have gone. So they did GLP-1 groups. Perfect example is in Soma, I am the peptide consultant. So if you ever came and did a peptide consult, it would be with me. And I would guide you through every step of the way, from you ordering it, you receiving it, to how you dose it, to 2 weeks later, hey, how you doing, Eliot? To a month later, hey, do we need to make any changes? To 2 months later, hey, just checking in. I have a constant dialogue with all my clients, and it doesn't even have to be about peptides, because I do have a background of fitness. So, I open them, I go, ask me fitness questions, and it doesn't cost them any more money. I'm not doing this to make money off of them, to give the advice of something I've learned. I want to help them, and I
Yeah.
want to help them optimize themselves. So accountability from yourself and accountability from others, have others make you feel accountable. Say, hey, listen, I need your help. I need you to be on me. Check on, even if it's a friend across the United States or across the world. Hey, could you just message me to make sure I worked out today? You know what I mean? Or get your lazy butt up. You got to work out. You know what I mean? Or you got to eat right. Or would you eat today? Just to check in. And that goes a long way with people. It's being having a human connection with them.
I agree. I agree. That's a great point. Accountability is definitely something we've seen to lack a bit more, and I get it because there's a lot of people who are busy with their lives, and we kind of push past that part of accountability on our priorities. I have this for work, or I have this, and I have kids, and they're doing this, and then I also have to cook, and then I also have to clean. And I mean, there's a lot that goes on in people's lives, and we kind of need to sit down, I would say, even once a week with the family, or even if you're by yourself as well, and just kind of, what is my priorities? What do I want to get straight? And what's my goal? Where do I want to get to in life? And how can I take the steps to get there? And for me, the first thing has always been health. If I
Yeah,
can consistently be healthy and figure out what makes me healthy and talk to the right people and be part of the same groups, and then I can form that support around myself, and then I can go to the next thing to reach my end goal. And so
exactly.
for me, I agree with that, the accountability point. And if someone that's listening right now to this podcast and feels a bit stuck in their health, what would you say? Give me the first step that they should take to kind of reset.
You know what? You could reach out to me, at responsiblepeptides@outlook.com. You can, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to chat with anybody and everybody. Go to our website, go to, soma.com, check out our website and look at the peptides that are there in this world are pretty amazing because our site is so scientifically backed. We have categories. So it's literally, you can click on a link and it'll pop down and it'll say, like 20 different things you might be feeling. And when you click on it, it'll match the peptide that will help you with that. So it's super
Awesome.
interactive. Yeah. And there's learning. We have education on there. We are, from the basics of what is a peptide? How does it work in your body? And then, then if you want to really deep dive into it, get a peptide consultant, just, jump on, book the appointment, and then you have me to chat to. And, once I chat with you, you're my client forever now. Just like my personal training clients used to say, my name is on your back. So if I'm going to help you in this world, my name is on your back. And I don't want a negative thing said about me not being able to be there for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely the education standpoint. If anyone wants to reach out to Peter, I'll have all the links in the bio, and you can go check him out. And if you want to talk to him, send him a quick email, hop on a call with him, figure out how you can start your health journey. Peter, I appreciate having you on the podcast today. Hopefully, we'll do something again in the future. And I appreciate all your expertise and your advice.
Oh, hey, listen, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Of course.